All right, Grace, thank you for being up for having this chat.
No problem.
So tell me to begin with, what does it mean to be non-binary?
It simply just means that my gender and my perception of gender doesn't fit into the Western standards of man and woman. And so for me personally, I don't really feel like I'm anywhere near that. I feel separated from it. Other non-binary people may feel between, or they may feel a bit of both, or they may have that fluidity where they flow. And so it's really important to understand that every non-binary person experiences this differently, and they will all have their own stories and they will all feel it somewhere different. But for me, I just, have that feeling of separation from gender.
So tell me, you mentioned there, every non-binary person will have their own stories. Tell us a little bit about yours. How long have you known this about yourself?
Yeah, so I've kind of really understood that I was non-binary for about a year and a bit. But I think looking back, I kind of knew since I was a kid. A lot of the things I did as a kid, I didn't see the gender of it. I was a hyperactive kid that always wanted to play and always wanted to do something for the hands. So if one day that meant I was wearing the night suit and I was fighting off a dragon, or the next I was learning to sew, it was just simply I was doing that. I didn't see that things were supposed to be for girls or for boys, but I was taught that, unfortunately. And so as I then kind of grew up, I got taught that, girls are supposed to act one way and girls are supposed to look one way, but I always felt super disconnected from that. But the only thing that really kind of tied me in was I had this really long hair, and so I was able to do my hair with my friends. I was able to talk about what style to do or how I wash it, and so that to me was kind of always a boat or a link that kind of made me feel feminine. And so then when I was about 16, one of my idols, G-Flip, they came out as non-binary, and so I knew about the term, and I had people in my life who were non-binary, and so I knew it was something, but seeing someone who I looked up to so much come out, it really made me reflect on who I was, and seeing someone with long hair, which, in my mind made them a woman, that really made me question, what is this? Could I be non-binary? But, I was 16 and I thought, nope, that is way too difficult to think about at the moment. And so then a year later, I did the world's greatest shave, and I shaved off all my hair. And for the first time seeing myself in the mirror, I went, oh my God, what has happened? Where's my femininity gone? Like the thing that tied me to being a girl, to being a woman, to being, close with my friends was suddenly gone. And I thought, this is a bit strange. And then I remember I walked into the shop and there was this older lady in there, and she greeted me. She went, "Hey miss, how you going?" I thought, not a fan of that. And then I was shopping around and we were talking, and she goes, "Oh, I really miss being a young girl like yourself." And I thought, no, that's completely wrong. And I remember getting back into the car and going, oh no, I'm non-binary. That's it. I can't deny it anymore. And so that was about a year ago. And so I think for me, the biggest issue was kind of fighting a lot of those internalized gender stereotypes that I had placed on myself and placed on others. And so, kind of removing all of that allowed me to fully understand who I was.
Did that feel really freeing?
100%.
Yeah.
It was like this huge weight had lifted, because for so long I had felt something was different. Something was separating me from people, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And then finally understanding that, it's because I've only existed in these gendered spaces as a non-gendered person. So it was, this really freeing sense of finally understanding why I didn't feel quite right.
So you talked about 12 months ago, this is something you sort of went, oh, I now understand this about myself. What's the journey been like over the last 12 months, and why now sharing this story at this moment?
I think for me, I didn't really realize kind of how angry I was getting at people for when they were misgendering me, and they didn't know because I didn't tell them. So I've decided that, I can't live like that anymore. I want to be fully myself. I want to fully embrace this, and I want other people to be able to refer to me in ways that I'm comfortable with, because, when I'm getting mad at my friends for assuming that I'm a woman when I've told them nothing differently, that's not healthy. And so I just think finally, I've had enough. I just want to be free.
I love that. And I think it's a really great point to talk about. Something we've started to see a little bit more, the use of pronouns and actually letting people know and creating the space to share, mine are she, her. Tell us about pronouns and the importance of making sure we create that moment to ask and we don't make assumptions.
Definitely. So pronouns are just like a kind of another way to refer to someone. And so the most common are she, her, he, him. And then there are also the use, like I use they, them. And so not every non-binary person is going to use they, them. They might have no preference for pronouns and might use any. And so it's just that really important thing, because you don't realize how much of a difference it makes. Like I didn't realize, but finally hearing people refer to me as they, them, you know, it's this phenomenal euphoric feeling. Like I was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago and we were doing a video review and my coach was talking like I just let a ball through my legs. I'd then gone and tripped over my own feet, looked like an absolute fool, but he had used my right pronouns. So I'm there sitting, you know, grinning.
Smiling from ear to ear, yeah.
Trying ear to ear. My teammates probably thinking, you know, what's they're on about? Like I've just made a fool of myself, but all I'm thinking about is they just use they, you know, like that's phenomenal. And so it's, yeah, really important that it can be something small as when you first meet someone, you go, oh, hey, Grace Wilson, they, them pronouns, what are your pronouns? Or just checking in on friends, you know, that you've maybe known for a long time. So it's, yeah, just asking that question. It's not a difficult question. It's really easy to slip in there and ask.
I think it's really important to just double click on the fact that that is such a big deal and how much of a difference something that a lot of people would consider really small made to you and how you felt. And the other thing I think is really important, you mentioned how a lot of the work you had to do when you came to this realization about yourself was to undo all that wiring. For a lot of people, they're going to stuff up. They might occasionally misgender you. What's the right way to handle one of those moments where you put your foot in it?
Yeah, definitely. I just think, you know, don't make a big deal out of it. Don't say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Just say, oh, sorry, my bad. And then go on and use their pronouns, because, you know, I hear it every day. I get misgendered all the time. And that's fine, because I understand that not many people know other people that use they, them pronouns or use multiple sets of pronouns. So it's something new for everyone and it's going to take time. Like it even took time for myself to gender me correctly. Like I'd still say, oh, you know, she'll be right and stuff like that. And so it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to stuff up, acknowledge it and just move on. It's not a big deal.
I want to ask as well what other things are important. Non-binary friends of mine have made the point around gender neutral bathrooms and things like that, having spaces where you feel you're welcome in the way that you should. What should we be thoughtful and mindful about?
I definitely think gender neutral bathrooms should be a must, and you know, they are popping up more and more, except they're also the disabled bathrooms. So then it's that thing of, I don't want to invade a space where someone with a disability needs to use that. And then I also don't feel comfortable going into the female bathroom. So it's, you know, more change has to be made to, you know, have more gender neutral bathrooms. And I was really fortunate at school that we had gender neutral bathrooms, because I had known other non-binary kids who would just wait until they got home to use the bathroom. And that is not healthy. You know, it's going to cause long-term issues. And so making sure that also then in group settings, you're not making things exclusively gendered. You know, I do play on a women's soccer team, but there are ways around that you can make that non-gendered, you know, like using terms like team, crew, referring to the color team you're on instead of saying girls, ladies, and all of that. So just changing some language in situations to make it more gender neutral. And because that's also then just making more inclusive for everyone, regardless.
I think it's such a great point. And you brought up football, of course. What's your experience been like at the club and the kind of conversations you're starting to have? How have your teammates been with this news and making that change and shift, and coaches and the like? How have you found all of that?
Well, I actually just came out to the team this morning.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's
a big moment. How are you feeling?
I felt phenomenal. I was smiling ear to ear the whole way home.
Was it scary to do?
Oh, it was terrifying.
Yeah?
It was. It's
And what made it scary, if I can ask? Was it the reaction, or was it just actually saying that in front of such a big group of people for the first time?
Because I think I've always refrained from saying I'm non-binary.
Yeah.
Like, there's always been this notion that labels and stuff like that can be a bit of a negative. You know, like growing up, I would never refer to myself as lesbian, because that was a word that had been turned into a dirty concept. And with non-binary, you know, that's kind of been this term that has been, you know, a lot of people make fun of it because they're like, oh, well, if you're non-binary, then my pronouns are attack helicopter, stuff like that. Yeah. So it is, from my experience, I have had, you know, struggled to clearly say my labels, but I think I was just more scared because this is, you know, such a big moment for me. And this is the first kind of step in my journey, but I had a phenomenal reaction. Like the girls, they were lovely about it. I think I got a hug from every player.
I was going to say, tell us about that moment. So it was very, very much embraced and celebrated.
Yeah, definitely. You know, it was standing in front of them. You know, as soon as I said it, cheers, applause, you know, it was just this lovely thing. And finally, you know, I just felt so comfortable and so supported. So it was probably one of the best feelings.
That's so awesome. I'm so glad that moment happened in that way for you. And what was it important for you to share and for your teammates to know in that moment?
I think just first and foremost, letting them know that I'm non-binary, that I use they, them pronouns, and that, it's okay for them to make mistakes when they're going to start trying to shift to it, and that I'm here for any questions they have about it. Like, ask questions, please do, because the more we can talk about it, the more you can understand, the more that, you can maybe look around your circle and go, my friends, my siblings, my cousins, my partners, they're starting to feel like this, and so it's going to be able to create ongoing conversations that they can have outside.
Absolutely. And so with this platform, if people watching this take away one thing, what would you like them to leave watching this knowing or doing differently?
Just to understand that it is a real thing. It's not this made up concept that people make fun of online, and it is, really important to me, because you might go your whole life and your gender is just simply that. But for someone like myself who's genderqueer, it's so much more, encompasses so much more of what I do day to day. So it's a really important thing for me. It's not something small, it's massive. And so just understand that, if you have non-binary people in your life, that they are going through a completely different story. They are going through a completely different world, and it is, it's a very challenging one, and that there are a lot of struggles, but it's also really rewarding. It's really rewarding when someone uses my pronouns, right? Or when I wear the right clothes, or when I have gender dysphoria around my chest, so when I bind my chest and stuff like that. So that's just, it's a difficult thing, but it's also something that needs to be celebrated.
Absolutely. Can I ask, you use the term gender dysphoria there. For people who haven't heard that before, what does that mean?
So it is a medical term that describes discomfort in your physical body in relation to your gender. And it's also quite an inaccessible thing, because at the moment there are a lot of barriers for, trans people to get hormone replacement therapy or to get gender affirming care, like top surgery or bottom surgery. And so I think understanding that it is a really big issue and challenge, and it's not as simple as, someone's a bit self-conscious, but It's actually a very deep-rooted, dislike about something, and it's just, our body doesn't match how we see ourselves, and that causes a lot of issues.
Yeah. And what would you like people to know about that, I guess, in terms of what they can do or how they can be more understanding?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, understanding that this is a very legitimate issue, and that it is something that causes a lot of mental health issues, a lot of depression, anxiety, and it is something that's very difficult to overcome. And so just offering your support if someone's feeling, extra dysphoric one day, saying, look, what can I do to help you? And also then celebrating when they're feeling euphoric, if they start changing their style, maybe comment on that. Say, look, you're looking fantastic. I love how confident you look and you feel. So just really celebrating the little wins and being there if, they're really struggling.
Could I ask as well, like when it comes to being a footballer, have you faced any barriers or challenges when it comes to being non-binary?
Yes, it's because it's obviously a binary sport where there's a men's and a women's team. So I can't escape the use of gendered language, no matter how hard I try. And so it's also very difficult because I don't want to intrude on obviously the women's team, because, gender is something to be celebrated, and they deserve to celebrate, their femininity. So it's that balance of having people respect me, but me also respecting them. And then obviously, people just assuming that I'm a woman because I play in the women's team, and then getting those people saying like, why do you deserve to play there if you don't identify as a woman? Well, it's simply because this is where I choose. This is where I feel most comfortable. And then on top of that, I can't have access to a lot of those gender affirming care because it's a wild recovery time for top surgeries, 3 to 6 months. I can't take that time off. So that's a bit of a barrier, but it's a trade-off I'll give. I'm able to play the sport that I love every day, so.
That's pretty wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned the role of the club. I mean, obviously within sport, you're playing in clubs your entire life.
Yeah.
I mean, how important, I'm thinking about people that are watching this that might be playing at a community club level, or that might be in charge of a school team, or involved in sport or in community groups in some way, shape or form. How important is it for them to do the work to understand? And then what are some things you'd encourage them to think about doing that can make their club or community group more welcoming and inclusive?
Yeah, it's so important that they have a good understanding of not just non-binary, but the whole queer community. Because unfortunately, a lot of LGBTQ plus kids drop out of sport because it's either it isn't able to reflect their gender identity, or they just don't have a good experience. So it's really important that from a young age we can foster these really positive environments, and so that we can have more queer kids coming through, because it's, too many leave the sport that they love, and the more the merrier, and also making sure that we're just inclusive with our language, because it is, like I've said, it is a binary sport, but there are ways around that we can make it more inclusive. Because what I found is that just existing in these heavily gendered spaces is really taxing. I haven't been able to exist in a space where gender isn't an issue. Gender is just something that you are. But so that's why it's really important that these community clubs and that these community spaces really are inclusive and are for everyone. Because, I can't escape that I'm in a women's team. I can't change that, and that's always going to be part of me. And, I'm not ashamed of that, but I just do wish that somewhere in the future, it wasn't based off gender, and that we were just able to exist, as who we are. But yeah, that's why it's super important that the language we use is, more gender neutral, more inclusive, and just making sure that everyone feels like they're in a safe space and feels like they can be who they are.
I think one of the most astonishing stats when I got involved with Pride Cup was that only 6% of the LGBTIQA community play sport because they don't feel safe and they feel welcome, which I share with people a lot because I think it surprises them. Does it surprise you?
No, not at all. Because, growing up, I was probably one of the only queer kids in my team, and I did face, some issues within that. And you can see how, a lot of kids wouldn't feel comfortable because...
Is that language? Is that teasing? Is that's
language? A lot of people just having these misconceptions of what it meant for me to be lesbian in a team, going like, oh, you must have a crush on all of us, when, ridiculous. So
don't flatter yourselves.
Yeah. So it's just, the more understanding we can have, the more we can make it, because it's a shame that people drop out of sports, because it's such a wonderful thing. It's just really powerful being of where you can come together with your friends and you can have a great time. You can be physically active, and it's so great for mental and physical health, and is probably, I think, one of the best things in my life at this point. And it's a gift that I want everyone to be able to experience.
Totally agree. And I think that's why it's so important what we're doing with the Pride round in the A-Leagues collectively, and that Adelaide United have been a really big champion of this moment of celebration and visibility. But also the importance of education alongside it too, the need for those two things to happen in order to create that shift where more people can access this magical thing that is both playing and being able to feel safe and excited as a fan of sport, whatever way you want to identify, right?
100%. It's so important that everywhere is inclusive, because I'm a fan and a player, and it's just such a phenomenal thing.
If we jump forward to 10 years from now and we think about non-binary athletes in the world of sport, what would be your hope for their experience? What progress would you hope we've made in a decade's time?
That they don't have to sit down for an interview and come out to however many people. But I want them to have it easy, not to say that I've had it extremely difficult, but it is a process. I'm 18, but I'm almost a pioneer in this space. And so I've, I've had to figure out how to navigate this. And so I just want it to be a really streamlined, easy thing where you can play, where you feel comfortable. And at the end of the day, it's just about inclusivity. And it doesn't matter, what you were born, what you identify as. You just get to be there.
Sports for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that dream. I think anyway, if you've in any way be touched by sport, and I'm, not an athlete like you are, but I'm a passionate fan and very involved in other ways, and it's transformative. It's part of how I identify. It's part of what makes me excited for a weekend. It's part of what gets me through a week with anticipation. And to think that there's a whole swathe of our community who don't feel like that's for them just breaks my heart. And I want to see a world where everyone can participate in this wonderful force for community and inclusion, and excitement and joy that is sport.
Yeah. Definitely. And thinking back to the World Cup, what an atmosphere.
What a moment.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. And, getting to see the games. And I think, obviously the women's side of soccer is quite progressive in terms, have a lot of openly gay and lesbian players. And so, you already start to see that shift in inclusivity. A lot of queer people are able to find themselves in women's soccer. So I think, I don't want that just to be women's soccer. I just want it to be sports in general.
Yes, here. No, and it's true, right? You look at that team and even the normalising of their relationships being talked about and things like that. A couple of years ago, I don't remember anything happening like that. Now we're seeing that covered in mainstream news, and that is such exciting progress to see that and see more of that coverage. And to think, to your point, the absence of growing up, being able to see yourself in stories, to be able to see yourself in what was happening on the pitch, it matters.
Yeah.
It matters that we are changing that, because there's often that line, we need to see it so we can be it. There's real power in making sure we're actively changing the stories that we're telling and the role models that we've got.
Yeah, 100%.
And you're doing that.
Yeah. And I know that if I had, more non-binary and queer role models growing up, that it wouldn't have taken me 17 years to figure this out. It would have been a lot more easy, and it wouldn't have been such an isolating experience. And so that's really why I want to do this, because I want to reassure people that they are not alone in this, that they may feel different from everyone else, but that doesn't mean that they have to be isolated or they have to be alone. It's something to celebrate. Diversity makes the world such a wonderful place.
Hell yeah, it does. It'd be so boring if we're all the same.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, who wants to live in that? I love our difference is what makes us unique, but also what makes life interesting and what makes teams work, for that matter too. I mean, there's so much literature around high performing teams, and the fact that, if you've got all the same type of person or all the same type of player, you're not going to get a great outcome, right? So this applies to high performance just as much as it applies to what we want in our communities.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I just want to say thank you for being you and for telling your story and owning your truth, and for giving us the opportunity to, through your platform, hopefully inspire, educate and reach a lot more people. It's really significant what you're doing.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being able to sit here and listen to me ramble.